Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's New with Summon and 360 Intuitive Services. As Scott mentioned, I'm Brent Cook. I'm the Director of Product Management for Summon, and today I'll be joined by Amy Pimble, who's the Director of Product Management for Intuitive and 360 Services. Well, we've got a lot to talk to you about today. We'll review all of our accomplishments from last year for both Summon and 360 Intuitive Services. We'll take a look ahead, both at the February release, which for Summon is in the preview environment right now and ready to go. And we'll talk about what candidates we have under consideration right now for the 2023 roadmap. And then we'll take some time to do a deep dive on the same type of topics for 360 and Intuitive Services. We'll wrap up with some community involvement and webinar information, and then we'll have some time for your questions. So as Scott mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, please be sure to submit those questions via the Q&A tool, and we'd be happy to answer whatever questions you have. So first off, let's take a moment to look back at 2022 and all the things that we did with Summon. We had a lot of great changes with the user interface, including the new Quick Look pane. This provides all the information on a specific result without having to leave the search results page. That now is shown as an overlay rather than being in line with the results, and it allows you to browse from record to record and see all these various details. It's an improved visual placement based on user feedback and expectations that we've seen from other websites that your users are used to. We also added in the ability to create custom citation styles and add those to your instance of Summon. You can create your own if you'd like. You can modify existing ones or pick from hundreds and hundreds of various styles, all found on the citationstyles.org site. You can create styles based on existing ones that match your needs, modify them if you have slightly different variations that you like to use on them. And you can find information on how to do all of that, again, at citationstyles.org. So you can choose to either maintain the default ones that you have with Summon or use this great resource to choose whatever sources you'd like. We also improved the identification of online newspaper articles. This is something that was on the Idea Exchange, and it was one of your items that you voted for NERS, or the New Enhancement Request System, as part of Igloo and Aluna for last year for inclusion on the roadmap. There were a variety of resources that we saw that had a variety of records marked as web resources, which were actually online newspaper articles. So a lot of more blog posts or other online resources that various news organizations used. We identified those sources and we reclassified those titles as newspaper articles. So all the various sources you see on that right-hand side, like the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, New York Times, and all the others, we've gone through and updated those so that they were marked both as web resources and as newspaper articles, so that when you do an include or an exclude using that newspaper article filter, these will now be included. Another big change to the user interface was the refresh of the advanced search page. That's now an overlay. We improved access to all the various features, including making the facet panels a little bit bigger in there, making it easier to scroll through or find values that you'd like. And we've just made it more responsive so it works well on small screens as well. And as I'll talk about in a minute, we have some improvements there as well that we have in the February release. Another great NERS feature that we had from last year was the addition of collection discovery for Summon over Alma. This allows libraries to have a more visual representation of their collections and share those to their patrons. Again, this is available for all Summon over Alma sites. We also did some great work on Sierra via Summon and SAML support. You can now log in with both CAS and SAML for Sierra via Summon sites. This allows you to do requests or holds or a variety of different actions within the search results, as well as a new improvement in the February release about saved searches, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. And the good news about the SAML work is that even though currently it's focused on Sierra via Summon, this should work for other SAML resources, particularly for saved searches, and again, I'll talk about that more in a moment. Another great NERS feature from last year was the addition of improvements for open access linking. In the past, you could have an open access icon show up on a specific result, but if you hadn't activated that collection within your instance of Summon, then the link would not show up as available for that particular resource. So it'd be marked as open access, but not have an open access link. We address this by making it so you can now turn on a link for open access specifically that is linked to that open access icon. You can see there on the right with the little open padlock icon. So now if you turn on this feature, any open access result that gets that open access icon should have a link directly to the full text from the icon. This means that you don't have to activate the collection. It will be displayed regardless of whether or not that collection is activated, and again, should go directly to the full text. Another great NERS feature was the addition of journal coverage dates to those specific results. So if you have a journal level record, we now show a summary in the brief result of what your coverage is, and you can click on a link to see the coverage details like you can see here in the screen capture on the right-hand side of the screen. In addition, there's a lot in addition to that functionality, there's a lot in the back end that we were doing to help improve data processing, data quality, and things like that. We realized that data excellence is incredibly important. This addresses the intersection from content, technology, and users, and as part of our data-driven cross-company strategy, this helps us build stronger services, create higher user satisfaction, and have better outcomes. And by having that data excellence, we make sure that the data is high quality, that it's as discoverable as possible, and that the data we have is as current as we can possibly make it. This impacts both features and functionality. A few things to note: when we talk about content across our services, there are a variety of resources from that. It touches Alma, Summon, Rialto, Esploro, SFX and 360 Link, and Rapido. We use CDI, which is our overall Central Discovery Index, as well as a variety of knowledge bases. We have the 360 KB, the SFX KB, and the Alma Community Zone. At the beginning of last year, we had over 58,000 collections in the knowledge bases or community zones. Last year, that grew to 74,700 collections. That's about a 15% annual collection growth. The same thing for CDI. We started off the year with 4.7 billion records, which continues to grow. We finished up 2022 with 5.14 billion records. That's a 10% annual record growth, and it's something that continues every year. So as we add all these records and all these collections, we make sure that it's of the best quality and it's as useful and accessible as we can possibly make it. We also did some work in CDI around Ebook Central book chapters. In November of 2022, we did our first load of over 55,000 records. We plan to continue that process, loading more than over 2 million records. This will allow direct linking to chapter levels and should boost these resources in search results when people are looking for these specific books. We've also continued to add to our Quick Links program. If you're not familiar with that or need a little reminder, Quick Links is a program we have where we work directly with providers to provide the best possible links directly to either PDFs or full text and HTML online. We have 30 providers in the program so far. That's 5 more that we've added since our last webinar in October of last year. Includes folks like the American Chemical Society, Cambridge University Press, and more. That means there's over 10,500 collections with 1.55 billion records that use Quick Links. We've had over 250 institutions with at least 100 clicks in November using this, over 400 institutions currently active or testing Quick Links, and there are over 300,000 clicks in November just on Quick Links. And the significance of this is that the linking success rate is amazing. It's a 99% linking success rate. And if you want to find out more about who those 30 providers are and about Quick Links in general, you can follow the link at the bottom of this screen. And as Scott mentioned earlier, we will make this presentation and the links available, at the end of the webinar. So no need to copy that URL. We'll make sure you have it. We also did a lot in improving the marking of peer review for records in CDI. There were about 506 million articles with peer review indicators at the beginning of 2022. That's now up to almost 551 million articles with peer review indication on them. That means we've added about 45 million correct peer review indications to records in the last year. We've also been working enhancing the rights process in CDI. As we added more and more institutions, the time for processing rights had increased to about 45 to 72 hours previously. Last year, we did a lot of work to bring this down, and it's now down to about 30 hours for processing writes as of November. We have additional improvements planned for 2023. Our goal is to reduce the processing time to be about a day, 24 hours, definitely less than 48 hours in a given day. And as that chart at the bottom shows you, we've done a lot of work to bring that down. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the February release, which is actually live in the preview environment right now. It will go live in production in about a week, excuse me, on February 1st. Hopefully you've had a chance to go out and take a look at it and see what's going on out there. First off, it is a shorter release cycle since we just finished up the final release and at the end of 2022 there. A lot of the focus was around improvements based on feedback that you gave us on the advanced search form from the November release. Previously, in the new design, we'd had the search boxes next to each other in 2 columns so that you could add more fields on the right-hand side. And we got a lot of good feedback from you on that. And we've now made that so it's all in 1 column, as you can see there on the right-hand side. This matches user expectations from a variety of other databases and data sources and layouts that users expect from places they've been. We also added some missing controls for font and button colors in the advanced search form. The clear all button that you can see there at the top of the form, as well as the search button itself, are now customizable. You can change both the font and the button color. So to change those, it's very easy to find. You go to the admin console for Summon under Settings and under Summon 2.0 Customizations, where all of your colors are. And you can change the Clear All button by using that Header Badge Clear All back color or Header Badge Clear All font color controls. Just switch them to custom and enter in the hexadecimal number that you'd like for those colors to be. Change the colors of the search button. Use the primary action button back color and text color controls. Those are just below the header badge. Those are called the primary action button because if you have a different language or if you change the word search, it may be a different label than what you see here. So that's the primary action button back color or text color. Both of those are ones that you can easily change the colors on. We also did a variety of other fixes based on your feedback. That includes things like addressing translation issues with a search option on the advanced search. So that phrase right there, you can now translate that into any language. There were a few languages where it wasn't translating for some reason. We fixed the label formatting for the 1-year button in Firefox. In other browsers, all 4 buttons had a 2-line layout, like the 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years there on the right-hand side. But in Firefox, for some reason, it didn't show up that way. So we've addressed it so it now all looks the same as consistent, like you can see on the screen now. And then finally, we did some work on library location facet values. You would select them on the advanced search page. And then previously, while the search would execute with those values applied, they wouldn't show up in the facets pane on the main results page. Those now show up there, so if you select them on the advanced search, you'll see them indicated in the facet pane like you see here in the screen grab. As I discussed earlier, we've got some great changes for SAML for saved searches. For Sierra via Summon customers, we've already tested this. You can now use SAML to save your searches in Sierra via Summon institutions. The big change for this is previously you had to use either Google or Microsoft social logins in order to use saved searches. And for Google login, we used your G Drive or your Google Drive to store your flat file of saved searches. And for Microsoft, we would store those flat files on your MS OneDrive. This was good because it meant that it gave all users control of their data and they saved it someplace where they already had existing content. However, we got a lot of feedback that there were institutions that have policies against using these types of social logins. So we've now added the ability to do SAML save-in for saved searches. This does 2 things. It means that you can use that login you already have for your campus login, and it also stores that flat file on the Summon servers. So that means that in addition to OneDrive and Google logins, you can now do that as well. This is GDPR compliant. Like I said, we tested it with Sierra customers. This should work for any type of SAML system. So if you have another SAML system that you'd like to test out with this, please reach out to me, and I'll gladly work with you on setting that up. Some other fixes and improvements we have as part of the release and based on your feedback. We addressed issues preventing some public notes from being displayed in Quick Look. So now those public notes should be appearing. When we implemented the eJournal coverage ranges, they were using the standard database names. Now we will display custom database names if you have those available as part of eJournal coverage ranges. We adjusted the logic for reviewing links provided in emails from the email citation functionality. This is something that was discussed on the listserv, and we pushed out a patch a couple of weeks ago in order to address this sooner, but it is now part of the major release. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what was going on there. We had a process in which we checked the URLs to make sure that they would work properly and that they weren't malicious. If a email failed this process, which ones with easy proxy links in there were failing a process, we wouldn't send out an email at all. We've modified this now so that the logic is better and easy proxy links go through no problem. And if we do see one that appears to be either malformed or malicious, rather than blocking the email from being sent, we just strip that link out so that everything else is sent and a little note saying link not included is in the email, and the email is sent out to the end user. Another issue we addressed was the ability to view and classic catalog link was missing from records and summon for CRVS summon customers. That's been addressed. And we finally changed the no results page when we made some layout changes this year. A white blank bar was starting to appear at the bottom of the no results page, and that's been removed. So next, let's talk a little bit about 2023 roadmap and what's being considered currently. I should note that what I'm going to show you here is a preview of what we expect. We will have a roadmap webinar next month in February to go over the final roadmap when we have that completed. Currently, we're in the process of reviewing your NERS voting that ended in December. And once we have that finalized and incorporated, you'll get the final list. So what you see today is what likely will show up, or a subset of it will, based on that analysis. So our release dates and preview environment timelines are fairly standard for what we've done in the past years. As I mentioned, the February release is coming up next Wednesday on February 1st. The preview is currently ongoing. That started last week on the 18th. In May, that first Wednesday, May 3rd, we have a release coming out, the preview starting on April 19th. The third quarter release is on August 2nd, and that preview starts on July 19th. And then our last release of the year will be on November 1st, and that preview starts on October 18th. As a reminder, on all other months where we don't have a quarterly release, we usually do have a maintenance release. There's no preview environment for this, and there are no release notes for these types of features because most of these features are back-end fixes or improvements or specific customer needs. Unless there happens to be a customer or patron-facing functionality that we decide to include on one of those maintenance releases, they usually are quiet releases, again, with no preview or no release notes. As I mentioned at the beginning of this section, we're in the process of evaluating the NERS candidates for the 2023 roadmap. The features you see on the screen here right now are the ones that are the top voted features that we'd like to see appear. I'm now working with the enhancement committee for Illuna and Igloo, and what we do is we look at these for defining them completely, making sure they're feasible, size them for how much time and resources it will take, and then based on the amount of resources we have allocated for the NERS development, a subset or a smaller selection of these will be added to the summon roadmap. So that includes things like supporting subscriptions with embargoes or rolling cutoff dates, making the sender email field on the summon feedback forms mandatory, working on making all the 5XX note fields show up on the quick look in summon, improving quick look to be more flexible so that we can deliver more elements, the ability to schedule summon reports to be sent, better addressing how we index EBSCO abstracts so that they no longer appear in full text searches, adding include matches in full text to some suggestions to improve your search if people don't get good results back, providing ebook usage reports, removing identical links and summon results for ebooks, the ability to prevent ebook and computer file records from merging so that they are separate, making sure that the language settings of Summon match with those in 360 Link, having both a library facet and a location facet, making it so that you can customize the order of all the various elements within the right-hand panel, things like Database Finder, Custom Panels, Topics, so that that's more flexible. And then finally, making sure that some configuration screens prompt you to save changes when you're navigating off of them prior to save. Other features that we're looking at here internally to include scopes for Summon searches. This is a feature that has been available in Primo, and we're looking at making this available in Summon. This will allow users to pre-filter their searches based on a variety of criteria that you select as an institution. So you can choose things like collections or content type, and have sort of a preset array of facets or filters applied to that search. And any institution can create several search scopes so you can easily switch between them using a drop-down or have one set as your default. We're also doing the second half of the LTI support for Summon. Last year, as part of the NERS process, we put on the feature to do the design and requirements for this functionality. So in 2023, we'll deliver the actual API to be able to integrate Summon into learning management systems such as Canvas. So we'll have LTI support in 2023. We'll also be doing some work on Google Analytics. The current version of Google Analytics we support is a little bit older. It will be discontinued in July. So in preparation for that change by Google, we will be updating to support Google Analytics 4, and that is planned for before July. It should be in the May release. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we always are working on data quality and rights. We will continue to work on the performance of the rights process and the matching process that happens during that, and looking at the merge record, how we can improve the content types that we have and the other elements that we have within the merge record. And as always, we continue to work on accessibility and analytics. For accessibility in particular, we review any feature that we add for accessibility compliance, and then any feedback or bugs that are found by you or your users are addressed as soon as possible in our releases as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Amy to talk about 360 and Intona services in 2023.
All right, thanks a lot, Brent. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I am going to follow much the same format as my colleague Brent in reviewing what we accomplished in 2022, showing what's coming up for the Q1 release here next week, and then finally previewing what the 2023 roadmap looks like and what that means for expanding your services and enabling innovation. Next, please. So 2022, our highlights are listed here, and we really focused on community requests that we gleaned from you primarily through ideas exchange, but also through conversations and customer support feedback. But really requests impacted and improved both patron and staff experiences. We did have our first NERS official project that garnered enough votes for us to, officially include it on the roadmap. And that one's actually listed secondly here, and that was the ability to rank EJP results that had the search string in the main title over search results that only had the search string in the alternative title. So that is now an option in the admin console that you can turn on. And that was a terrific project for us to work on. We really learned a lot of stuff in doing that. We also implemented a EJP improvement to filter the autocomplete suggestions by those titles that are in the library profile, as opposed to everything that is available in the KB, thus preventing some dead ends for users with a suggestion that maybe the library doesn't provide access to. We now display the percentage of MARC record availability at the database level within Client Center and in TOTA. And we also allow you to upload your 360 link database order via spreadsheet. So you can download that, manipulate it in your favorite spreadsheet compatible software, and then re-upload it. And that means you don't have to spend time dragging and dropping in the admin console or trying to renumber things manually. And I will say all of the things I just talked about, while one was the officially voted upon NERS project, the other three were candidates, and we were able to scope those and fit them in and respond to your requests in that way, even though they didn't officially garner enough votes. One major undertaking that we did towards in the second part of last year was the ability to not upload KBART files. So of course that includes validation and error checking, matching, and updating your library profile. And this was rolled out with the ability to upload those files manually through the Client Center and now in TOTA, as well as upload them for LSH databases. And that's going to feed into a big project we're working on in 2023. In terms of customer care, we responded to more than 200 reports. We do triage those every week and rank those and prioritize those and address as many as possible. Again, that's more than 200 over the course of 4 releases. We support and deliver monthly linker releases, so responding to changes in linker syntaxes and updates from providers and new providers and new collections. Those go out at least on a monthly basis. We are also continuing to invest in accessibility fixes and analysis, including at the front end of design and development. So when we do things like the requests you see in that left bucket, we do have accessibility in mind moving forward, not just doing retroactive reviews and solutions. We are invested in providing rights feed improvements in order to support CDI. And we also play, the 360 team plays a part in the company-wide data excellence initiative in that we manage most of the KB tools that do content ingestion and normalization. So that's always an ongoing initiative. Our third big initiative in 2022 was infrastructure. We had a major database software migration last summer. We have begun and are in the process of migrating folks who currently use FTP for summon and 360 mark updates to a new platform, managed file transfer. So that has begun and will continue through scheduled for now July of 2023. And we respond to security reports, both reported by our internal stakeholders as well as clients who come across things in the wild that we need to address. So that was 2022. Thank you, Brent. 2023 quarterly releases should look familiar. We match what the Summon team does. So we're looking forward to February 1st next week, May 3rd, August 4th, and November 1st. Next, please. So what does that Q1 release look like next week? This is coming pretty quickly on the heels of our Q4 release. And of course, we all had holidays and vacation times in there. So it is a bit of a truncated release. But we did have a couple of big projects that we wanted to address. The first is that we have included in both in TOTA and Client Center, 360 Counter and in TOTA, a new counter report status. So prior to this release, if you go into Client Center and TOTA and you delete a counter report that has been uploaded, you have no audit trail of that. There's no way to know that was done. Unfortunately, that led to some sticky support analyses and development digging around in the database to see, well, why, I uploaded this report, the numbers don't look right, et cetera. And it, in many cases, it turns out that someone reported someone deleted the report, and that's perfectly fine. It just wasn't obvious to anyone who was trying to kind of track down the history of that. So we put in the ability to see that specific status, as well as some accompanying information about when it happened and by whom. And this is intended to, just give you some visibility into what went on in the report's history and eliminate support queries and some of that back and forth more easily. Next, please. Also, a project that we needed to address is that after the June database upgrade, customers started reporting to us that there were large numbers of change records in their monthly 360 MARC files. This was due to just the nature of a change in the database software system. And we needed to take a look at how we were handling title and publisher and make some improvements there. The changes that we have made will stabilize changes to unnormalized records and will improve the numbers that are coming through in those files. So you're going to see fewer changed records in those monthly releases, and ultimately that's going to lower the amount of time you need to load those files into your ILS or other remote system. Next, please. Some additional things that I wanted to highlight here, and that will also be in the release notes forthcoming. We have new linkers for Ebook Central, Nature, and Clinical Ethics. We are disabling cross-ref enrichment for titles when the summon is the referring source. KBART file upload capability is now in Entota. The database upload capability that we implemented initially in Client Center will also be in Entota. And for our Consortium Edition users, provider-specific linking parameters, and in this case, it was specifically reported for EBSCO authorization settings, but it's applicable to any provider-specific linking parameter. It can be inherited by the member libraries and will display in the member library settings, so you can see exactly what's going on with those parameters. Next, please. And then looking ahead, this is our tentative roadmap. Here are some of the things that we're thinking about. I had mentioned KBART as being a first step in a big undertaking. And that is overall, the ability to lower your total cost of ownership by providing auto holdings management services for more providers than just Ebook Central, right? This is an evergreen request in the Ideas Exchange. We are now, with the ability to support KBART files, we can now do the serious work of exchanging data with more providers. We are in the midst of talking to Taylor and Francis, and we'll be able to deliver that first half of this year. We are also going to talk to our friends at Springer, Elsevier, Wiley, and Ovid. I know that not everyone, has relationships with these other providers, but we already do internally. Some of our other products currently have auto holding services for them. So, there's kind of a clear path for us there to move forward, but certainly other providers who can do similar things will be in the mix. We are also investigating the ability to expand our API capabilities in order to promote integration with remote systems. So we're going to be looking at where that makes sense to do, the level of effort to make that happen. What are the real use cases of being able to query, possibly write to your library profile from outside of the 360 ecosystem? What does it mean to potentially be able to search the KB outside of the 360 ecosystem? So that's going to be a big investigation, and some big decisions we'll need to make there. As with Summon, we have some great NERS ideas that are open to consideration at this point. A really fun one that the team and I really liked seeing was the open access indicator from the 360 KB. So when you're in Client Center or you're in Entota and there are titles that are open access, how can we make that obvious? Is it some kind of filter? Is it some kind of icon? Do we need the ability to search for that? Should we display a percentage of titles that are open access within a database? So there are a lot of possibilities there. that we will get into and see what makes sense and will be most beneficial. Another highly voted on suggestion was the ability to see individual ebook titles in 360 usage statistics. So currently you can see individual journal titles, but we have not yet exposed ebook titles. So this is not counter reports. This is in the out-of-the-box 360 usage statistics. So we'll be taking a look at the level of effort to include that. And there's also a request to be able to support searching for titles within the EJP by P or E identifier if that identifier is not in the holding in your library profile. So currently you can search for that title by an identifier that isn't necessarily in the holding in Client Center and be able to retrieve it. The same is not true for EJP. So we've got some great examples. We're going to be looking into how we can rectify that situation. And next, please. I would think we're over to community engagement for you, Brent. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. As Amy mentioned, we're talking a little bit about community engagement now. We've got some great things coming up here shortly. As I mentioned earlier, we have the 2023 Summon and 360 Services Roadmap Overview. That's happening in February, on February 15th and 16th. That's when we'll announce the final candidates for development in 2023 from all the great things that we discussed today. And as I mentioned earlier, likely be a subset of those. There's a variety of times you can see here. We try to make sure that there's ones that are available that work well in the Americas and in APAC and in EMEA. So if you look there, you'll see plenty. Just follow that link at the top and you'll be able to register for the session that's appropriate for you. And even if you can't make one of those times, as Scott mentioned earlier, we always send out the link to the recording as well as a copy of this PowerPoint itself. So even if you're not sure if you can make one of those times, I highly suggest that you sign up so that, again, you'll get the information after the fact. We also make that available in the Knowledge Center, though, too, so you can find it there as well. This year, we're also looking forward to seeing you in person at Luna, Igloo, and IUG. If Amy and I plan to be as many of these as we can. If we're not at these, other representatives from Clarivate will be there. We also attend the regional meetings that you have. So look for us out at those. If it's not us, again, it'll be other Clarivate representatives. But we look forward to Luna in May 19th through the 12th in Los Angeles, California. At IUG at pretty much the same time, which is May 10th through 13th in Phoenix, Arizona, here in the United States. And then Igloo this year is September 11th through 14th in Leuven, Belgium. So we look forward to all of those various places and hope to see you in person in 2023. So again, thank you everyone for your time today. And we really appreciate the amount of effort that you put into Summon. I personally, as a product manager, am always excited to work on Summon because of the community engagement we have. So thank you for your contributions on the listserv, in the idea exchange, and the NERS voting in Igloo and Luna. The reason why Summon is as great as it is today is because of your input and feedback. So I greatly appreciate that. Amy, would you like to add a few words?
Yeah, sure. I would echo all of that. The 360 team and I do greatly appreciate your interest, the time you invest in helping us make our products better, the support that you give us, and the feedback that you give us. Please continue to do so by offering your ideas and comments. And thanks for joining us today.